I mean, I can do that. I can analyze a game for you guys. I got you. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Maligan Young Punk down inside my chest, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. As always, for all of my people that are from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na? Masaya akong makikinig. Muli maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video, aking mga kaibigan. Appreciate it very much. For anybody who is coming from China, I will say ni hao and shishini. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping and watching my stuff. So what I did was I went back 2 years ago to 2019, and I have it is the Tata Steel India Rapid. So this is coming from round 4. So I have Liren versus Wesley So coming from that tournament. So if you guys are ready to go, we'll see. We will take a look and see what we have for this game. Let's roll. So we got D4. Knight comes to F6. We got C4, E6, Knight to F3. We have D5. So everybody pretty much that watches my channel consistently, this should be very familiar to you. Of course, you have knights to C3s. You have some Catalan situations coming. You can even just play like, super solid with E3. You have many options. Black has the same thing. I mean, you got bishop to E7s. You have bishop to B4s. You got C6. Playing a bishop somewhere, getting castled, and throwing a B6 in the situation, a knight B to D7, like that. You have many different options, but like you guys see, this position is very familiar to you guys. So we do see knight to C3 in this position here. Bishop comes to E7, and then we do see bishop to G5. This is just like you're just trying to get your bishop outside of your pawn chain. It's very solid, to actually just play E3. So it's not like a really bad thing for your bishop to be there, because a lot of the times you'll see like a B3 bishop B2 situation. So it's definitely not the end of the world. It's not like you're putting yourself in a really bad position by not developing the bishop. So H6 comes, bishop comes back to H4, pawn takes C4. Now this is the Queen's Gambit declined, and so a lot of the times when you see like the captures on C4, it ends up being like a Queen's Gambit accepted type situation, but that's a lot earlier on in the situation. Usually when you see like D4, D5, C4, and then pawn takes immediately, or even just like a move or two later, that's usually going to be a Queen's Gambit accepted. And this is basically just looked at as a capture within the Queen's Gambit decline. So it's a little bit different. So E3, C5. You guys were sitting there like, man, you know what I know? C5 is coming at some point. You are correct. C5 did come. Yes. Okay. So bishop takes on C4, and this is ideal. Like I was, talking about in previous videos, taking on C4 with the bishop when you haven't developed it yet is more ideal. It's not like it makes a huge difference, but you don't waste the tempo already developing it to E2 or D3. Pawn takes D4, knight takes D4, bishop to D7, castles, and we see knight to C6. So, this is good. This is solid for black, so it's not like black is in a bad position. They are maybe slightly behind as far as development goes, but, everything is everything. But, just visually, it looks really nice for white. Because, pretty much white is all the way developed. They got their king into safety. So it kind of seems like white could start pushing, in a forward direction a little bit quicker. So we have knight back to F3. Castles by black. Rook to C1. Very logical move, as you guys know, putting that on an open file. Rook comes to C8. Black has the same idea. A3. It's not the end of the world to see a bishop to B4 in these situations, but it prevents some stuff. So it definitely restricts what black has the ability to do. So it kind of keeps their pieces a little clustered in this area, which isn't bad, but it's just not as free. So queen comes to B6, knight to A4, knocking the queen back, saying, hey, what are you doing on B6? So the queen retreats back to C7, which is not like ultimately the ideal spot because it is opposite this rook. So, you only have two pieces separating it. B4. And we have A6. You definitely don't want to have any issues with B5 being able to displace this knight because then the threat of something does become real. So, like, let's just throw, like, just something random on the board. Like, let's just say the king just steps over real quick, and you're able to push this. Now, you kind of have some issues. Actually, you don't. I take that back. You don't have any issues. Because the discovery... Yeah, there's no discoveries because the queen is just going to take care. Yeah, no, never mind. Scratch what I'm saying. A6 just probably has a similar idea behind it. Probably maybe just to prevent bishop to b5 because then it can become kind of an issue after, you know, if the knight does come back to d4. So, yes, I retract what I just got done saying. So, bishop comes back to d3. We see e5. Knight comes to c3. Rook f to d8. Now, it doesn't look like it's that dangerous of a situation, but if you are not recognizing what the position has the potential to have in it, then you can fall into some trouble. Like if we actually saw rook f to e8, you would actually be seeing the bishop taking on f6. And then if you just so happen to take back on f6, you would be looking at knight takes d7. And so that is kind of hidden in the position. There are a few other, you know, type of tricks and stuff in the position, but, you know, you definitely have a discovery after this, and you're going to be dropping your queen. So that is why we saw rook f to d8, just making sure that we protect against that that issue. So queen comes to b3, bishop to g4. Pretty clear threat. I mean, you're wanting to remove this knight, but damage white structure so that you kind of have some lines to the king. So bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and then we have bishop to e4, and this is just like kind of defending, you know, against that whole thing. This bishop is actually doing, you know, pretty good on this diagonal as well, kind of slicing through this knight type situation. Rook comes to d6, making sure that we just have the knight very well defended. We have h3, bishop comes back to d7, rook to c2, bishop back to e8, and then we got the doubling of the rook. So as you can see, white is really trying to contest this c file and say that, hey, it's mine, it's not yours. Rook c comes to d8. So black says, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and just get on the d file. And now we have g4. And then h5. Just immediately trying to hook onto this pawn structure so that you can, you know, maybe just do a little bit of damage to it. So king comes to g2. Pawn takes g4, pawn takes g4. Says you guys can see like the king is still pretty covered. It's not really super exposed. Plus it has this bishop pretty, you know, kind of doing a good job of kind of holding everything together central. So we have b6, knight back down to d3. Queen comes to d7. We have king to g3. And it might look like it kind of drops a little bit of material, but you are going to be getting this material back. Rook takes d3, queen takes d3, queen takes d3. Bishop takes d3, rook takes d3. We throw in the little intermezzo g5. Bishop back to e7, and then rook takes c6. Bishop takes c6, rook takes c6. And as you can see, everything is fairly equal. It just kind of seems like, man, we're just going to kind of go into the gate with a draw. But you're wrong. We're not going to draw this game. e4 comes. And this might seem a little inconvenient because, like, the knight is holding this pawn. So it kind of seems like if the knight moves, you're going to be dropping that pawn. But white has a really nice tempo move to make with knight to e5. You know, this is counterattacking the rook. So you don't really have time to take this pawn. So the bishop comes to d6. We see king to f4, protecting the knight. Rook comes to d5. And so this actually looks kind of like a little bit of an issue because now you have this pin going on, and you have this rook capable of capturing as well. So it kind of seems like you have to, you know, give up your rook for the bishop, which is pretty that's pretty much what it is. I mean, you do have to give up this rook for the bishop because there's a lot of pressure there. But in the game, we see rook to c8 with check, king comes down to h7, and then we have rook to e8. So you're like, okay, hold on a second. Like now, I didn't have to give it up, right? So like I was able to kind of swing up and get a tempo on the king, swing the rook over, and then now I'm good. So if you want to go ahead and stop the video and see what Wesley So plays in this position, feel free to do so. All right, so unfortunately, this seems like it's a good idea. It seems like it defends, but this actually drops an entire piece and just basically loses you the game. It might be kind of hard to see, But the key move in this position that Wesley So found was rook takes e5. And it might look kind of strange at first, but after rook takes e5, you see f6. And this is like the follow-up to the situation. So as you guys can probably see now, this rook is going to get pinned, and it's just going to be completely lost. So the pawn takes f6, pawn takes f6. King is able to get a pawn with king takes e4, but then bishop takes e5. And we have two more moves: king to e5, bishop comes to bishop comes back to b2, and you know, it's going to be getting some tempos on these pawns. So that's iffy. That's an issue, but you know, it's just more important that you have an entire piece extra as black, and so it is in this position that Ding Liren does resign the game. Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually pretty playable. You know, if you were to take here. You know, because the rook would take back, and I mean, at least maybe you had kind of at least a pawn for your troubles, but it is really hard to play a knight against the rook, especially if you're not up a bunch of material. But this isn't like losing quite as bad, but it's definitely still an issue. So you're pretty much, we're in a position either way where you're probably going to go ahead and just lose the game. So, I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So that was the game that Wesley So was able to win. So I think it was pretty nice. It was pretty interesting. But yes, I appreciate you guys very much. So for my people that are in the Philippines, let me get these good mornings for you. Mayong buntag, mayad na agahan, naibag na bigat, masantos ya kabosan, marhe na aga, buenos dias, maanyong aga, mapia na uma, kapian kapu no dios, mayap a abak, mapia mayad na aga, mapia agay, mapia kapa pizza, my big abu kla, maraja na buntag, marya my nat, I think it's Kasan Yangan si LB. Yeah, Malpe na aga. Yes, Kasan Yangan si LB. I always feel like I miss one, even when I don't even think I'm missing one. I just feel like I feel like I do. I feel like maybe I got the order wrong or something like that. But assalamu alaikum, salam to you, merci for anybody else. We got yes, shishini for anybody who is coming from China. Appreciate you guys very much, and I will see you next time.